My name is Lauren Carter, and I'm 32 years old. I never thought I'd be telling my story like this. But if you've ever felt like the people who should protect you are the same ones trying to destroy you, then you'll understand why I'm speaking up. Before I start, subscribe if you like real lifestyle stories with twists, receipts, and lessons, because this one still feels unreal even when I say it out loud. I married Ethan Carter 6 years ago. He wasn't just my husband, he was my calm. The kind of guy who'd double-check the locks at night, put gas in my car without asking, and leave little notes on the fridge like, "Text me when you get there." We weren't flashy. We were stable, peaceful, the kind of relationship people say they want, until they actually see how boring healthy love looks. Ethan worked in commercial real estate investing. Over time, he built something big: properties, partnerships, long-term holdings. I didn't run the business, but I was part of the life. I sat through dinners with accountants, helped review paperwork when he wanted a second opinion, and kept track of dates and files because Ethan was brilliant but messy. Then, last October, the call came. A highway accident. One of those situations you see on the news and pray never touches your life. But it did. I remember dropping the phone and sliding down the kitchen cabinets. Like my legs forgot what standing meant. My chest felt like someone parked a truck on it. Friends came over, but all I heard was noise. People kept saying, "I'm so sorry." And I kept nodding like a robot because my brain couldn't process that Ethan was gone. The funeral was packed. Ethan was respected. People from work, old friends, distant family, neighbors, everyone showed up. And for one brief moment, I felt surrounded. Then I noticed my parents, Diane and Robert Brooks. They arrived dressed like they were attending a press event. My mother hugged me with dry eyes, like she was checking a box. My dad patted my shoulder, twice to taps, like I was a stranger. That's when I realized something that made my stomach drop. They weren't here for Ethan, they were here for what Ethan left behind. If you're still with me, subscribe, because what happened next felt like a movie, except it was my life, and there was no pause button. A few days after the funeral, I was home alone. I was still wearing Ethan's hoodie. It smelled like him, and I was clinging to that smell like it was oxygen. My mom called. "Lauren, we need to talk. In person." I said, "About what?" She paused and then said it in that sweet voice she uses when she's about to do something cruel. "It's for your safety, honey. We're worried." Worried about what? I was grieving. Yes, but I wasn't unsafe. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't doing anything except waking up, crying, and trying to survive the day. But they insisted. They came the next morning. They sat on my couch like they owned it. My dad crossed his legs and looked around my living room like he was evaluating a property, and then my mom pulled out a folder. A literal folder. She said, "Lauren, we've been noticing concerning behavior." I blinked. "What?" My dad said, "You've been emotional, unstable." I laughed once, not because it was funny, but because it was insane. My husband died. What did you expect me to be? My mom looked at me with this fake pity expression. "This isn't normal grief. You're not coping." And Ethan's estate. There it was. Ethan's estate. My heart started pounding because I could feel what was coming, and my dad leaned forward. "We spoke to someone, a family attorney. There are steps we can take to protect you from making bad decisions." I said, "Protect me from what?" And my mother said, calmly, "From yourself." Then she slid a paper across the table. It was a petition. They were trying to claim I was mentally unfit so they could get control over my finances, over Ethan's assets. I stared at the document like it was written in another language. You're trying to, what? Put me under a conservatorship? My dad didn't even deny it. He said, it's temporary, just until you stabilize. I felt my throat tighten. You can't do this. My mom's voice hardened. Lauren, you're not thinking clearly. And Ethan left a lot of money. A lot. We can manage it responsibly. There it was again. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about the money not being in their hands. Now here's the part that makes my skin crawl even now, my mother said. Also, Ethan's sister called. She's concerned too. Ethan's sister, Melissa Carter. Melissa and I were never close, but I never thought she'd join something like this. She always acted polite, always hugged me at holidays. But I remembered how she'd ask questions about Ethan's business like she was casually curious, when really she was calculating. I said, Melissa is involved. My dad nodded. She thinks this is best. I stood up so fast my knees hit the coffee table. Get out, I said, and my mom stood too. Lauren, don't make a scene. A scene? My voice cracked. You walked into my house days after my husband died and called me mentally unfit. My dad looked annoyed. Lower your voice. That's when I knew. They weren't even scared of me. They thought I was weak, easy, a grieving widow they could push around. But I wasn't as alone as they assumed. Because my Ethan had been planning for this in ways I didn't realize. Yet, that night, I couldn't sleep. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept replaying their faces, their calm voices, the way my mother used the word safety like it was a weapon. So I went into Ethan's home office. It was untouched. Since the accident, his laptop was still closed. His mug still sat there, stained at the bottom. I sat in his chair and cried. And then I noticed something. A small black notebook on the bookshelf, tucked behind a row of business books. It wasn't his usual style. Ethan was digital files, spreadsheets, cloud storage. He wasn't a notebook guy, but this notebook had one word written on it in neat handwriting. Lauren. My chest tightened. I opened it, and the first page said, if anything happens to me, do not trust Diane and Robert. I froze. Asterisk if you want to hear what happened next, subscribe. Because what I found next was the beginning of the proof. And it was the first time I realized Ethan knew exactly what my family was capable of. At the bottom of the page, Ethan had written, evidence is stored. Instructions on the last page. My hands were sweaty. My heart was beating so loud I could hear. I flipped through the notebook and saw dates, notes, names, and something that looked like a timeline. And then I saw it. A line that made my blood run cold. They tried this before. Before I could process that, my phone buzzed. A text from my mom. We're filing tomorrow. Don't fight us. It'll be easier. I stared at the screen, then back at Ethan's notebook. They thought I was powerless. They thought grief made me stupid. But Ethan left me something, and I was about to use it. Asterisk I sat there in Ethan's office, notebook open, heart thudding, like it was trying to escape. My mother's text still glowed on my screen. We're filing tomorrow. Don't fight us. It'll be easier. The casual cruelty of that line made my stomach twist. I looked back down at the notebook and forced myself to breathe. Ethan had written dates, conversations, names, short entries that looked like reminders. At first glance it seemed random until I realized it was a pattern log. Like he'd been documenting interactions the way you document a leak before the ceiling collapses. One entry stood out. Diane asked about beneficiary structure again. Pretended it was for Lauren's protection. Another, Robert suggested I put assets under a family trust, controlled by them. Smiled too much. I felt my mouth go dry. My parents had been circling this for a while. I kept turning pages. Then I found a section titled, "If they say she's unfit," under it. Ethan had written, "They will weaponize grief. They will use a doctor who barely knows her. They will exaggerate emotional moments. They will try to isolate her from counsel. They will push for emergency filing to get temporary control." It read like a playbook. And the worst part, it was accurate because they were already doing it. I stood up and started pacing, gripping the notebook like it was a lifeline. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't waste energy on shock. Ethan had left instructions. He said the last page would explain, so I flipped to the end. The last page had two things: a safe deposit box number and name written in bold. "Martin trust him," under that, Ethan had scribbled. "Martin has copies. Tell him the phrase, blue folder, porch light. He'll know." I swallowed hard. A safe deposit box meant Ethan planned for the what if. And blue folder. Porch light was clearly a code, something simple enough for me to remember, but meaningless to anyone else. My hands were shaking, but my brain was finally in motion. Step 1. Protect myself legally. Step 2. Secure whatever Ethan stored. Step 3. Stop them from making me look unstable. Because I knew how this would go. If my parents filed tomorrow, they'd show up in court with calm faces and rehearsed concern. They'd paint me as hysterical, confused, unreliable, and every tear I shed would become evidence against me. So I did something that felt unnatural. I stopped crying. I washed my face. I brushed my hair. I put on clean clothes like I was going to a meeting because I was. Then I called the number in Ethan's notebook. It rang twice. A man answered. "Martin Lee." My voice came out thin. "Hi. My name is Lauren Carter. I'm Ethan's wife." Silence, then a softer tone. "Lauren, I'm so sorry. I've been waiting for your call." That sentence alone told me everything. He knew something was coming. I swallowed. Ethan wrote, "Blue folder, porch light." There was another pause, longer this time. "Okay," Martin said, suddenly sharp and professional. "Listen carefully. You need to come to my office today. And Lauren, do not meet your parents alone again." My throat tightened. "They're filing something tomorrow." "I know," he said. "Ethan warned me they'd try. He asked me to prepare." I almost dropped the phone. Prepared. That word hit me like a warm blanket in the middle of a storm. "Martin," I whispered, "what is happening? Your parents can't take control unless they convince a judge you're incapable," he said. "Their fastest route is to get a temporary emergency order. That's why they're moving quickly." I said, "Can they really do that?" "They can try," he replied. "But if we show the court you're competent and that this is a financial motive, the attempt can backfire." Backfire. I liked that word. Before I continue, subscribe because the next part is where the first real receipt shows up. And it's not what you think. Martin told me to bring the notebook and any messages from my parents. I grabbed my phone, took screenshots of everything: texts, missed calls, even voicemails. I didn't delete anything. I didn't respond emotionally. I kept it clean. Then I drove to his office. The second I walked in, I felt like I was entering A world where feelings didn't matter, only facts did. Martin was in his late 40s, neat suit, tired eyes. He didn't waste time. He opened a legal pad and said, "Start from the beginning." So I told him everything. The funeral, the folder, the petition, my mom's fake concern, my dad's calm threats, Melissa's involvement. He nodded, then asked, "Did they mention a doctor?" I blinked. "No, not directly." He frowned. "They usually do. That means they may already have one lined up." The thought made me nauseous. How can a doctor claim I'm unfit if they've barely met me? Martin tapped his pen. "It happens more than you think. Someone meets you once, notes you're grieving, calls it severe emotional instability, and boom, paperwork." My stomach flipped. "Okay," Martin continued. "We're going to do 3 things today." He held up one finger. "First, we file a response preemptively, so the court sees we're engaged and prepared. Second, we schedule an independent psychological evaluation with a reputable professional, someone the court respects. Third, we secure Ethan's safe deposit box." I exhaled. Today, he said. "Before they try." I nodded, so hard my neck hurt. Within an hour, Martin's assistant printed documents. I signed things with trembling hands. It felt surreal signing legal papers while still feeling Ethan's absence in every breath. Then Martin looked at me and said, "Lauren, I need you to understand something. The court will watch your behavior." "I know," I whispered. "No," he said firmly. "I mean everything. How you speak, how you react. If they provoke you and you explode, they'll call it proof." That hit me like a slap, because my mother's entire life skill is provocation. She pushes until you snap, then points and says, "See, that's what I mean." Martin slid me a small notebook. "Write down every interaction going forward. Time, date, what was said. Keep it factual." I nodded. "Okay." Then he added, "And do not under any circumstances go to your parents' house, meet them alone, or let them convince you to sign anything." My hands clenched. "They already tried." "I know," he said. "They'll try again." But louder. After that, we drove to the bank. It was the kind of bank with high ceilings and quiet carpet, the kind that feels like money lives there. Martin talked to the manager. They verified identity, and then they escorted us to a back room with a metal door. My heart was beating so hard I thought I'd faint. The safe deposit box slid out like a drawer. Martin looked at me. "You open it." My hands shook as I turned the key. I lifted the lid. Inside was a thick blue folder exactly like Ethan's code, and on top of it, a sealed envelope with my name printed neatly. Lauren Carter *. I stared at it. Breath caught. Martin's voice was gentle. "Open it." I tore it carefully. Inside was a letter. From Ethan, not long, not poetic, just Ethan, direct and protective. It said, "Lauren, if you're reading this, it means I'm not there to shield you. Your parents will try to claim you're unfit. They're after control, not your well-being." The blue folder contains proof emails, recorded calls, and a signed statement from me about their pressure. "Give this to Martin immediately. I love you. Be calm. Be smart. Win." My eyes burned, not because I was weak, because Ethan knew. He knew exactly how ugly they could get. Then Martin opened the blue folder. And there it was. Printed email threads. One was between Ethan and my father. Subject line, "Family Asset Protection Plan my dad had written. If Lauren can't manage emotionally, We should have authority to step in. We can present it as care. We need a doctor statement to support it. I felt my vision blur. Another email from my mother. We can't let her blow through it. She's too emotional. We should act fast after the funeral. My lungs felt like they forgot how to work. Because it wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was proof. Asterisk before I continue subscribe. Because the next is where they realize I have the folder. And they make a move that crosses a line so hard it changes everything. I looked up at Martin. He wasn't surprised. He just said, "This is strong." I whispered, "They planned it." He nodded. "Yes. And now we can show the court it's a financial play." I felt my hands curl into fists. For the first time since Ethan died, I wasn't drowning. I was standing. But I knew something else too. The moment my parents realized I wasn't alone, they'd escalate. And I was right. Because, as we walked out of the bank, my phone started ringing. Mom, Dad, Melissa, one after another. I didn't answer. Then a text came from Melissa. "Lauren, please don't do anything stupid. We're trying to help you." And my mother followed with, "We know you went to the bank. Don't make this harder." I stared at the screen. How did they know? My stomach dropped. Martin's face tightened. They might have someone watching. Or they got tipped. I whispered, "This is insane." He said, "No, this is greed." And, right then, my mother sent one last message. "If you don't cooperate, we'll have you taken in for evaluation." Evaluation. That word felt like a cage. But now I had the blue folder. And they didn't know what was inside it. Yet, I was sitting in Martin Lee's car outside the bank, staring at my phone like it had turned into a weapon. My hands were cold, but my mind was finally steady. Martin looked at me and said, "You're going to feel an urge to defend yourself emotionally. Don't." I swallowed. "What do I do?" He said, "We control the narrative. We document everything, and we don't react in a way that gives them anything to use." Then he added, "Also go home. But don't go alone." So I didn't. Martin arranged for a colleague, Rachel Benton, another attorney in his office, to accompany me back to my house to collect a few essentials. Not because I was helpless, but because optics mattered. If my parents pulled a stunt, I needed a credible witness with me. When we arrived, my driveway looked normal, quiet, too quiet. I stepped out of the car and immediately felt that prickly sensation you get when you know someone is watching. Rachel whispered, "Do you have cameras?" "Yes," I said, and then my brain lit up. Ethan had installed them last year after a break-in down the street. Front door, driveway, living room entry, and a small one in the hallway. He'd said, "I just want peace." Rachel nodded. "Good." We walked inside. I went straight to Ethan's office to grab my laptop, the blue folder copies, and some personal documents, and then the doorbell rang. Not a friendly ring either. A long press. I looked at Rachel. "It's them," she said calmly. "Don't open the door. Check the camera first." I pulled the camera feed on my phone. There they were. Diane and Robert Brooks, my parents, standing on my porch. Like they owned it. But they weren't alone. Behind them was a man in a navy jacket holding a clipboard. My stomach tightened. Rachel asked quietly, "Do you recognize him?" I shook my head. "No." Another long press on the bell. Then my mother's voice came through the door, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "Lauren, honey, open up. We're worried about you." I felt my body tense, but Rachel put a hand up. "We're not engaging." At the door, my father's voice cut in, sharp and commanding. Lauren, we're here with a professional. We need to speak with you, a professional. That meant they'd already started the she's unfit routine. Rachel whispered. They may be trying to bait you into a scene. My mother knocked like she was pounding on a drum. Lauren, please. You haven't been answering. We have. To make sure you're okay. I watched the camera feed. My mom's face looked concerned, but her eyes were focused, like she was acting. Then my dad leaned closer to the door and said, "If you don't open, we'll have to take next steps." Rachel mouthed, "Threat." I took a slow breath and typed a message to my mother instead of opening the door. Text to Diane. I'm safe. I'm at home with legal counsel present. Please leave my property. All communication goes through my attorney. I hit send. Seconds later, my phone buzzed with her reply. Diane, legal counsel. Lauren, don't do this. You're not thinking clearly. Rachel raised her eyebrows. Beautiful. Keep that. My dad started talking to the man with the clipboard. The man stepped forward and held up a paper to the camera like we were supposed to see it. Rachel said, "Do not open." Then my mother did something that made my jaw drop. She turned slightly so she was angled toward the camera like she knew it was recording, and she said, in a trembling voice, "Lauren, we love you. Please, just let us help. You're scaring us." It was theater, and it would have worked if I didn't know the script. Before I continue, subscribe, because this is where I stopped being the grieving widow in their story and became the person writing the official version of events. Rachel said, "We're calling non-emergency police to document that they're trespassing and harassing." My heart pounded. Won't that make me look dramatic? Rachel shook her head. No. It makes you look responsible. You requested they leave. They refused. That's the difference. So she called. While we waited, my parents kept performing on the porch. My dad said loudly, "Lauren has been unstable since her husband passed. We're trying to ensure she doesn't harm her future." Rachel muttered, "He's planting language." My mother added, "She's confused. She's not herself." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I stayed inside, calm, recorded, and quiet. Because the camera saw everything, and cameras don't get emotional. A few minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up. 2 officers stepped out. One approached my parents. The clipboard man stood back. Rachel and I went to the door, but we didn't open it fully, just enough to speak safely with the chain on. Rachel introduced herself. "I'm attorney Rachel Benton. My client, Lauren Carter, is inside, safe. She has asked these individuals to leave." The officer nodded. "Mum, are you okay?" he asked me directly. I kept my voice steady. "Yes, officer. I'm safe. I have counsel. I've asked them to leave, and they're refusing." My mother immediately jumped in. "Officer, she's not well. She's grieving. She's making irrational choices." Rachel cut her off politely but firmly. "There's no emergency here. They are attempting to create one." The officer turned to my parents. "Do you have any legal order requiring her to comply with you?" The clipboard man stepped forward. "We have a request for a wellness check and a recommendation for evaluation." The officer held up a hand. "A recommendation is not a court order." My father's face tightened. My mother's eyes flashed just for a second before she returned to her sad act. The officer continued, "You need to leave the property. If you continue to harass her, she can file for a restraining order." My mother gasped like she was the victim. "We're her parents." The officer didn't care. "Leave." Asterisk they left. But not before my mother shot the camera one last look, pure hatred, like she'd forgotten the mask. For half a second, Rachel whispered, "That was excellent." I felt my legs shake once the adrenaline started fading. "They really brought someone to force an evaluation," Rachel nodded. "And they failed because there was no legal basis. But I wasn't naive. I knew they would come back with something stronger." That night, Martin called. I saw the footage. He said, "You handled it perfectly." I exhaled. "What now?" Martin said, "Now we take control before they get a temporary order. Tomorrow morning, we filed to things. An emergency motion to block their petition, and a request to sanction them for harassment." Sanction, another word I liked. Then he said, "Also, we're going to do something else." "What?" "We're going to set a trap, legal, clean, and undeniable." My stomach tightened. "How?" Martin explained. "We suspect they're coordinating with Melissa and possibly trying to access Ethan's accounts or pressure you into signing authority. If we can get them to confirm, in writing, that they're doing this for control of assets while simultaneously claiming it's for your well-being, the judge will see the motive clearly." Rachel added, "They're already slipping. Your mom's text about you not thinking clearly is perfect. So we planned it. We drafted a single message, short, calm, and designed to make them reveal themselves." The next morning, Martin told me to send this to my parents. Text to Diane and Robert. "I'm cooperating with an independent evaluation scheduled by my attorney. I'm safe and managing my affairs. Please confirm in writing what specific legal authority you are seeking over Ethan's estate and why." It was genius because it did two things. It showed I was willing to be evaluated by a neutral professional, so I wasn't avoiding help. It forced them to state their true goal: authority over money. I sent it. Within minutes, my dad replied, "Robert, we need temporary control to prevent financial mistakes. You can't be trusted right now in your current mental state." There. It was. Clear as day. My mother replied right after, "Diane, this isn't about money. It's about protecting you. But yes, we need to manage the estate until you're stable." Contradiction. Right in writing. Then Melissa texted me separately. "Melissa, Lauren, stop fighting. Dad would have wanted the family to handle this." That line made my blood boil because Ethan would have wanted the exact opposite. But I didn't respond emotionally. I forwarded everything to Martin. He called me 10 minutes later, voice sharp with satisfaction. "Lauren," he said, "this is exactly what we needed." Asterisk before I continue, subscribe because next is where we walk into court. They tried to paint me as unfit, and the proof hit so hard the judge's tone changes mid-hearing. That afternoon, we went to court for the initial hearing. Not a dramatic courtroom like TV, smaller, quieter. But the stakes felt enormous. My parents sat on one side with their attorney. Melissa sat behind them, arms folded like she was judging my existence. When I walked in with Martin and Rachel, my mother's face flickered surprise, then anger, then fake sadness again. The judge entered. Everyone stood. My parents' attorney started with the script. Concerned family, grieving widow, unstable behavior, urgent need for protective oversight. And then my mother took the stand and said, tearfully, "We're just trying to keep Lauren safe. She's not herself." The judge looked at me. "Mrs. Carter, do you wish to respond?" Martin stood. "Yes, Your Honor." He handed the clerk a packet. Exhibit A. A series of texts from Diane and Robert Brooks explicitly stating their intent to take control of the estate due to alleged mental unfitness. without any medical diagnosis. He paused. Exhibit B. Surveillance footage showing harassment at Mrs. Carter's home, including an attempt to force a non-court-ordered evaluation. My mother's face tightened. Martin continued. Exhibit C. Email evidence from the deceased, Ethan Carter, documenting that these exact actions were planned in advance for financial control, including language about obtaining a doctor's statement to support it. The judge's expression changed. It wasn't sympathy anymore. It was scrutiny. And when the judge turned to my parents and asked, "Do you deny writing these messages?" My father's attorney tried to object, but the judge held up a hand. Answer the question. My father swallowed. No. My mother whispered. We were worried. The judge leaned forward slightly. Worried enough to plan this before the funeral? Silence. Melissa shifted in her seat. I sat still, hands folded, breathing slow, because I wasn't fighting with emotion. I was letting facts speak. And in that room, facts were louder than tears. The judge sat there flipping through the exhibits. Martin handed in. You could hear the papers move. That soft sound felt like thunder to me, because every page was a brick in the wall my parents were trying to climb. My mother Diane Brooks kept doing this thing where she'd dab her eyes and then glance at the judge to see if it was working. My father Robert Brooks was rigid, jaw tight, like he was annoyed the court wasn't instantly handing him control. And Melissa, Ethan's sister, sat behind them, arms crossed, looking offended that I dared to show up with proof. The judge finally looked up, double quotes, Mrs. Carter, she said, your husband's passing is tragic, but grief alone is not incapacity. My chest loosened by a fraction. Then she turned to my parents, Mr. and Mrs. Brooks. You're asking the court to restrict a competent adult's legal rights. That is a serious request. Where is the medical evidence? Their attorney stood quickly. Your Honor, we have a professional recommendation. The judge cut him off. A recommendation is not a diagnosis, and I see no court order authorizing an evaluation. My mother leaned forward. But she's not well. She's been crying. The judge stared at her. Crying after losing a spouse does not qualify as mental unfitness. That one sentence felt like a door unlocking. My father tried a different approach. Your Honor, she has access to significant assets. It's a risk. Martin stood. Respectfully. Your Honor, that's the point. Their statements both in text and email reveal they're motivated by control of the estate, not her well-being. The judge nodded slowly and looked back down at the paperwork. Then she asked the question that made my mother's face go pale. Did the deceased leave a will? Martin answered, Yes, Your Honor. My parents' attorney jumped in. We haven't seen it. Martin said, That's because they were never entitled to it. The judge looked at Martin. Produce it. Martin placed a copy on the clerk's desk, and the judge scanned it. I watched her eyes move across the page. Her expression stayed neutral, but something changed around her mouth, like she'd just seen the real story behind the story. She looked up. According to this will, she said, Mrs. Carter is the sole primary beneficiary. My father's shoulders dropped slightly, like his body was already preparing for a loss. The judge continued, There is also a trust arrangement mentioned here. Melissa straightened up immediately. My mother spoke too quickly. Yes, that's what we're saying. She needs help managing it. The judge held up a hand. Let me finish. She turned another page. And the trustee appointed is. Her eyes paused. Martin Lee. Melissa's face snapped toward me. My mother's lips parted like she was about to protest. The judge continued, and the trust terms explicitly state that no member of Mrs. Carter's immediate family, including Diane and Robert Brooks, may serve as trustee or co-trustee. My mother's eyes widened and my father looked like he'd been slapped. Martin didn't smile, but I saw it in his posture. Ethan had built a legal fence, and my parents had run into it at full speed. Before I continue, subscribe, because this next part is where the judge asked one question, and my mother accidentally exposed herself. The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Brooks," she said, voice calm but sharp, "if your goal is only to ensure your daughter's well-being, why do your messages repeatedly mention control of the estate and claim she can't be trusted before any medical assessment?" My mother tried to recover. "I'm her mother. I know her. I can see she's falling apart." The judge asked, "Do you have any evidence she has harmed herself, attempted to harm herself, or made financially dangerous decisions?" My mother hesitated. "No," she admitted. "And yet," the judge said, "you attempted to bring a third party to her home to compel an evaluation without lawful authority. Do you understand how that appears?" My mother's voice went thin. "We were trying to help." The judge didn't raise her voice. "She didn't need to. Help," she repeated, "often does not require taking a competent adult's rights away." Then the judge turned to me. "Mrs. Carter, have you scheduled an independent evaluation?" I nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. My attorney arranged it." "Good," she said. "That shows responsibility." Then she looked at my parents one more time. "This petition for conservatorship is denied." I didn't breathe for a second. "Denied?" Then she added, "Furthermore, the court is concerned this was filed in bad faith. Mr. Lee, I suggest you consider filing for protective orders if harassment continues." My father's attorney tried to speak. "Your Honor," the judge held up her hand. "I've ruled. That was it. They lost." And not just quietly, officially. Outside the courtroom, my mother tried to approach me. She reached for my arm, like she could pull me back into childhood. "Lauren," she whispered, "don't do this to us." I stepped back. My father's face was hard. "You're choosing strangers over family." I looked at him and felt something strange, almost peaceful. "You chose money over your daughter," I said calmly. "I'm just choosing myself." Melissa walked up then, eyes flashing. "You're going to regret this," she hissed. "Ethan would be ashamed of you." That was the moment my grief turned into a steel wall. I said, "Don't ever speak for him again." Melissa scoffed. "You think you won." Martin stepped in. "This conversation is over. Any future contact goes through counsel." We left, but I wasn't naive enough to think it ended there. Over the next 2 weeks, my parents tried small attacks, voicemails, guilt texts, even showing up at my workplace once. But every time, I documented it. Every time, Martin responded officially. Then we filed for a restraining order. The judge granted it. My mother cried in court, that time to real tears now, because consequences sting when you're not used to them. And here's the twist that still shocks me when I say it out loud. When Martin and I finally did the full estate review, we discovered Ethan had created something called a conditional safeguard. It meant that if anyone attempted to challenge my competency to access the trust within a certain time after his death, a portion of the estate would automatically be redirected into a protected charity fund in Athens. Name a fund that helped widows and families facing legal exploitation. Basically, Ethan made it so greed would punish itself. When Martin explained it, I sat in silence, because Ethan didn't just protect me. He built a trap for anyone who tried to take advantage of me. My parents' petition didn't only fail, it triggered Ethan's safeguard, moving a chunk of money out of reach forever. When my father found out, he sent one last text. "You destroyed your own future." I stared at that message for a long time, and then I deleted it, because my future was never theirs to control. Before I unsubscribe, if you've ever dealt with family members who smile in public and scheme in private, these stories matter because they happen more than people admit. Now, months later, my life isn't perfect. I still miss Ethan in ways I can't explain. I still catch myself turning to tell him something and remembering he's not there. But I'm standing. I'm paying the bills. I'm managing the properties with Martin as trustee support. I'm learning the business Ethan built, slowly, step by step, like walking again after a fall. And I'm safe. Not because my parents saved me, because I finally chose to protect myself. So now I want to ask you something. Be honest. Did I do the right thing? Or was I wrong for taking legal action against my own parents? And if you were in my place, if the people who raised you tried to label you mentally unfit just to take what your spouse left you, what would you do? Drop your answer in the comments.